What is going on, everyone? It's Nico here, and today I have a video for you guys that has been a long time coming, because today I am going to be stepping into the shoes of all 32 general managers and going through what I would do if I were every single team this year in the NFL draft. In the past, I've done mock drafts where it's really more of a prediction of how I think the first round might go and the players that each team might take, but this time around it is all what I would do, not a prediction. And I want to make that very clear because some of my picks are not going to align with what we're going to see go down on draft night. I have some unique takes, to say the least, after studying a bunch of tape. So with all that said, it is time for me to take over for the Tennessee Titans with the number 1 pick, and we all know the pick is going to be Cam Ward. I'm not denying that, but I disagree. I really do. I like Cam Ward as a prospect. I think he's the one quarterback in this draft that is genuinely worth a first-round pick, but I'm not in love with Cam Ward. I don't think he's a slam dunk number 1 overall pick, and I wouldn't take him unless I felt good about the team that I was going to support him with, and I don't feel good enough about that in Tennessee's shoes to pass on a truly generational prospect in Travis Hunter. I would take Travis Hunter if I were the Titans. I see a future Hall of Famer in Travis Hunter. I really do. That's how special of a prospect I think he is. Regardless of what position he plays, I would personally put him at corner. I think he's going to be the best at that position in this draft. And maybe he's the best at multiple positions in this draft in the league. I understand you don't get to pick this high very often if you're the Titans, and you might not have a great chance at a franchise quarterback. You have a good chance at one right now. Not a great one, in my opinion, but I'm going to live with that because I am passing on Cam Ward for one of the best football players we've seen enter the draft in a very, very long time. But even less so than Tennessee, I definitely don't think the Browns are the situation that's going to get the most out of Cam Ward and really make it work because their offensive line is not good at all right now. I think that would be a brutal transition for Cam Ward considering how good his pass protection was at Miami. And they just run like a very play-action heavy offense that doesn't ask their quarterback to do a ton. And I just don't think that you would be getting the most out of Cam Ward's playmaking ability if they were to take him, and I don't see the rush. Like, if you're Cleveland, you are trying to wait and get off that Deshaun Watson contract, and you can afford to just build up the roster so that when you do draft a quarterback, it's actually going to be a situation that they can succeed in. So I would not take a quarterback if I were the Cleveland Browns. I think the Browns should go BPA, and that's probably Ashton Genty, and I do think that Mason Graham is a similar caliber of defensive prospect as Abdul Carter, but when you look at this draft and like the running back class, it's really good. Defensive tackle class is also really good. The edge class is a much bigger drop-off between Abdul Carter and the rest of the guys, so I would just take Abdul Carter here, pair him up with Myles Garrett. I mean, he has ridiculous pass rushing potential. I really think that Abdul Carter is going to be 80 to 90% of what Micah Parsons is. That might seem like helmet scouting, the fact they both wore 11 at Penn State, but it's really the only comparison that you should be making with his speed off the line and his bend around the edge. He could be a real game wrecker. I mean, with him and Myles Garrett, that would be a truly unstoppable duo. And for the Browns, you just feel like you're getting a good bet at a future superstar with the number 2 pick. And that's the goal when you have the number 2 pick, to get a guy you feel like can be a superstar for you. But now we get to the Giants with the number 3 pick, and this is where I would take Cam Ward because I really do have faith that if Cam Ward were to go to the Giants, there would be some fireworks offensively. Him working with Brian Dable, I think their pass protection is pretty solid. I've said this before. The Giants are going to be a genuinely good situation for a young quarterback to go to. I think they're going to draft someone in this draft, and I think that they're going to have a good shot with the situation around them, you know, throwing to Malik Neighbors. They got Darius Slayton, who I also think is a stud. I think Tyrone Tracy's an underrated running back. If there was just some alternate universe where we could get Cam Ward in New York, if the Giants had been able to successfully trade up with the Titans for him before the Titans fell in love with him, that would just be glorious. I would really believe in Cam Ward to be the franchise guy. So that's what I would do. I mean, this isn't necessarily my predictions. Like I said, we don't have to be realistic. It's just me going one by one what I would do in these team shoes. I'm going to continue to say what some Patriots fans do not want to hear, but it's the truth, in my opinion. You have to do right by Drake May with the number 4 pick. You have to protect him and take your favorite offensive lineman, because I understand the receiver room and the weapons just don't look that great for him, but it's fine, you know. They got Stephon Diggs. They got Matt Collins. I think those guys are very competent. I don't love Ramondre Stevenson, but I think it's all competent. You know what is not competent? Starting Vidarian Lowe at left tackle, one of the worst pass protectors in the league. if you address the offensive line and you really build it up, that can make everything work on offense. When you have a good offensive line and you have a quarterback like Drake May, your weapons are really not going to matter that much. Look at Josh Allen in Buffalo this year. His weapons were not extraordinary, but he had the good offensive line, and he's Josh Allen, and it worked because he had the time, and this would really be big for Drake May's development. So I just take the natural left tackle and the best bet to protect him, and I think that's Will Campbell out of LSU. Some people are concerned with his arm length. He does get beat more often than you probably like for a tackle that you're taking with the number 4 pick, but he also just really got put on an island and tested very often, and he did overall. The body of work was very good protecting his quarterback when he was at LSU. He did great for Jaden Daniels. He really helped Garrett Nussmeier, and now he's going to help Drake May, and we're just going to live with the results. We're going to say that we really tried to get a sure thing at a massive, truly massive need, and we're going to believe that it will help Drake May's development, and we did the right thing. We did the right thing. If the Patriots take Will Campbell, no one should criticize them because it's the smart, responsible thing to do. And the Jags at number 5, I would take Mason Graham. I really would. Some people might say, well, let's take Ashton Jeanty and see what Liam Cohen can do with him. But I just do not think that the Jags have the run blocking to get the most out of Ashton Jeanty. And that's really my philosophy when it comes down to it. I'm fine taking a running back with a first-round pick. I'm fine taking Ashton Jeanty in the top 10 of this draft. But if you don't really have a great offensive infrastructure and you're not going to give him the good blocking to really get him loose, like you're just wasting the pick, man. We saw what happened with Saquon in New York. Even though he was an incredible prospect, let's just build up the team around him and, try to take a running back later. This class is phenomenal. If I were the Jags, I'd look to trade down here, but I also just really love Mason Graham. I think he's absolutely worth this pick. I think he's probably the 3rd or 4th best player in this draft. I think he might be a better prospect than Abdul Carter, just considering what he can do as a pass rusher and a run defender. I will never get over what he did in that national championship game against Washington 2 years ago. Tortured Michael Penix. Just absolutely wrecked the game. And I've said it before, but with James Gladstone coming in from Los Angeles, what did they do in Los Angeles that made them so successful and exciting, and the future's great? They built up that young defensive line, and now the future looks really good in Jacksonville with Mason Graham, Josh Allen, and Travon Walker. Good luck offensive lines that play Jacksonville. The Raiders at number 6 are another team that a lot of people think should and could take Ashton Jeanty, and I think both of those things are reasonable to say, but if I were them, I would take Ted McMillan. I think Ted McMillan is the best real receiver in this draft outside of Travis Hunter if you're not counting him. I think Ted McMillan is worth this pick. I think that people are overthinking it. He's a massive human being. He looks like a man amongst boys out there. His catch radius is nuts. And yeah, he's not moving like Tank Dell or getting over the top of defenses like Xavier Worthy, but for his size, he is plenty athletic and fluid. He can stretch the field. He's good after the catch. He's a dynamic threat. And I think about the Raiders after trading for Geno Smith, and I love Brock Bowers, don't get me wrong. I think Jacoby Myers is very reliable. But if you trade for Geno Smith, why not give him a weapon like Ted McMillan on the outside? You can really start to create some fireworks in the passing game. And I just think that they're going to be a little bit limited. I don't see them being that explosive or efficient if you're just throwing it to Brock Bowers all the time. He's more of an underneath threat. Now you can really build that balanced attack that gets the most out of both guys. And I think Ashton Jeanty could absolutely work here. But I don't know if the Raiders are just like this amazing offensive situation where Jeanty is going to go nuts. I think he'd do well, but I think there are better spots for Ashton Jeanty, and we will get to that very soon. Trust me. The Jets at number 7 just have a natural hole at right tackle. Warren Carter is their projected starter there, or Carter Warren. I may have that mixed up. Regardless, it's a very big hole for them. I think Aaron Glenn wants to establish the run, and there's no better way to do that than just by taking Armand Membu out of Missouri. I don't know if it's Membu or Membau, but I will say Armand Membu is just a really sound prospect. He had a great combine. He's going to be a very high-level run blocker. He can get out in space. I think he's a very solid pass protector. You're just making life easier for Justin Fields, and you're going to make that run game pretty fun with Fields and Breece Hall. And if Fields doesn't work out, Membau and Olu Fashanu are going to be very, very useful to the next quarterback. I mean, to have that sort of young tackle situation, it's really promising. And then we get to the Carolina Panthers at number 8. And this, to me, is the biggest dilemma in this entire draft because I just don't really see the defender that I feel super excited to take here for the Panthers. And they desperately need more help on defense. They desperately need more youth in that area. You know, they did what they could in free agency, but it's still not enough to fix a unit that was so horrifically bad last year. Meanwhile, the offense looks very promising as it is. I would take Ted McMillan if he falls here, but I just don't think he deserves to fall here because Ted McMillan is a truly awesome receiver. If he's out there, I would just take him if I'm the Panthers. But if he's not on the board, I don't really just want to take a defender that's not worth the number 8 pick just because. One of these corners maybe. But if I'm the Panthers, I'm really looking to trade down. And with Ashton Jeanty on the board, there are teams that are going to be interested in trading up. And I think that if the board falls this way, it is a golden opportunity for the Panthers to trade down, get more stabs at some defenders, really just fill out that roster a bit more because Ashton Jeanty is a coveted player. You know the Bears want Ashton Jeanty. You know the Cowboys probably want Ashton Jeanty. But you know who else really might want Ashton Jeanty? They're trying to compete in the AFC. They have a glaring hole at running back. They don't really have a number 1 weapon for their ascending young quarterback. The Denver Broncos, man. The Denver Broncos, I think, are the team that should trade up for Ashton Jeanty in this situation. I understand it's a big leap from 20 to 8, but it is just so worth it, man. To get Ashton Jeanty in that offensive situation with their offensive line and just knowing what they need at running back to help Bo Nix, I mean, you just can't think of maybe a better place for him besides Chicago. And I would 100% say that Chicago should try to trade up for him here, but we're going to mix it up because not as many people bring up Denver as the spot for Jeanty, and I think that Jeanty going from the Broncos to the Broncos makes a ton of sense. So we are going to do this trade. If I'm Denver, I'm cool sending my second round pick. I'm cool sending maybe a future 3rd, a future 4th, something along the lines of this. So we're going to do this trade right here. We're going to do 8 for 20, 51, next year's 4th. I think the Panthers can feel fine with that. They will be able to take a defender at 20, just see how the board plays out. Probably still get someone that they would have heavily considered at number 8. They get that extra second round pick. And now the Denver Broncos can say that they have Ashton Jeanty in their offense. They get the second best player in the draft, in my opinion, and now look like a serious threat to the Chiefs. That might sound crazy, but just remember how they played them last year, and they were not too far behind in the standings. This Denver team is a serious threat with their defense, and now giving Bo Nix Ashton Jeanty in this Sean Payton offense. The Saints are another one that is kind of tough for me because they just have a lot of needs. So I'm going with the best player available, and not many people are going to believe this, but I am in love with Luther Burden as a prospect. We are going to take him for the Saints at number 9 overall. I think Luther Burden is easily wide receiver 2 in this class, and I think he's going to be a star receiver at the NFL level. When you combine how amazing he is after the catch with his potential as a route runner, how reliable his hands are, he could be such a dynamic threat. He's shown flashes as a deep threat. I think whatever team drafts him is going to put him in a role that has him doing more than Missouri asked him to. And I think Kellen Moore is the type of guy that can get the most out of Luther Burden. You know, the Saints have question marks at receiver from Chris Olave's injuries to Rashid Shaheed. Is he really just your clear out deep threat guy? Do you really want him as your number 2 receiver? Like, if I'm Kellen Moore, I'm not taking a quarterback here. I know Shador is someone that people think the Saints should consider. I'm just not doing that. I'm not forcing it. I'm bolstering the situation. I'm taking the best player available, in my opinion, in Luther Burden. I'm just really, really high on him. I think he's worth this pick, even though most people might not say that. So the Bears at number 10 obviously miss out on Ashton Jeanty. That's disappointing for sure. I think that Ben Johnson and their run blocking and Caleb Williams would all have been ready to create some fireworks offensively with him. But at the end of the day, the Bears still have some opportunities to do some really interesting things with this pick. And we're going to go a little bit out of the box with this one. And we're going to take Josh Simmons, left tackle out of Ohio State. Now, Josh Simmons is definitely a bit of a gamble because he just had a bad injury. The sample size was not very big before he got hurt. But man, this season when he was playing at left tackle, when he was healthy, he looked like a monster. To me, he looked like the best tackle prospect in this draft. If he had kept that up all season, if I were the Patriots, I'd probably take him over Will Campbell. It's a bit more of a risk. But I think if you're trying to upgrade from Braxton Jones at left tackle, you might as well try to swing for the fences and get a big upgrade over him instead of taking someone like, Kelvin Banks that you just don't feel quite as excited about. I think Josh Simmons could be a freaky pass protector for Caleb Williams, and there's just not as much pressure to get him on the field right away if you want to develop him, because like I said, Braxton Jones is solid, but man, this could really take the Bears offensive line to the next level long term. I think he is worth the number 10 pick, especially now that there are rumors that his medicals are coming out fine. Even though he suffered that injury, he's going to be back to normal once he recovers. So then we get to the 49ers at number 11, and if I'm the San Francisco 49ers, I'm looking at how depleted our trenches kind of are at this point, and some people would say, well, let's take Kelvin Banks. I would understand that, but I am so enamored by Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. I really am. I see it with this guy. He's a nose tackle who has weird movement skills as a pass rusher. He can kind of bend a little bit instead of just being a pure power rusher. He can really stuff the run. I look at this guy, and I think he has the potential to be one of the best defensive linemen in the game if it all goes well. I think the 49ers need that sort of presence on the interior defensive line, alongside Nick Bosa. Their interior just hasn't been that great. I think that they could really develop Kenneth Grant, and he's probably the closest thing we've seen to a Dexter Lawrence type of guy in a while that can really be a big-time pass rusher as a nose tackle, has that versatility at that size and movement that you just don't really see very often. So I would take him if I were the 49ers. And then we get to the Cowboys at number 12. It's a bummer for Dallas for sure. I would have taken Tet here. I would have taken Luther Burden here. I would have taken Ashton Jeanty here. But I still think the best thing you can do with this pick is get another weapon for Dak Prescott, because their offense has just been so congested. You want to free up CeeDee Lamb. You want to not force Dak to throw into as many tight windows. Let's try to stretch the field here and just take a guy that I know is going to do that while also having very reliable hands. He'll be ready to go right away in Matthew Golden out of Texas. This guy is a natural. I don't think he's 4.29 fast. I think that the combine isn't really indicative of his game speed, but he is definitely a vertical presence. He's a very smooth route runner. I think he's an ascending player in that regard. Texas really showed what he can do, and his hands are just so reliable, dude. You watch him at Texas, and he's cleaning up all of these kind of bad throws from Quinn Ewers, and I just imagine, him opening up things more for CeeDee Lamb and guys like Jake Ferguson underneath. That would really work, and I definitely want to get a running back if I'm Dallas, but in this class, you like your odds on day 2 to get someone really fun at that spot as well. So I don't know if Matthew Golden is so top 12 pick caliber of a guy. I see him as more of a top 20 guy, but we're just going to reach because it's exactly what we need, and I think he's going to be a good player. I think he's a very safe pick for the Cowboys. Now my Miami Dolphins are on the clock at number 13 overall. This is the ultimate opportunity for me to take control and do what I think is right for the team, and my mindset for the Dolphins right now is who really cares about next year at this point? It seems like we're going to trade away Jalen Ramsey. I hope Tyreek Hill is out the door. I don't think this team is going to compete for a Super Bowl no matter what we do this offseason, so we might as well just take the best prospect available. And there's definitely holes in the secondary with Jalen Ramsey out the door, but you would also like to bolster the offensive line. I think it's tough. I think this is a tough decision. Maybe Tyler Warren. But I do like Kelvin Banks out of Texas. I do. I don't think that he's a blue chip prospect at tackle, but he is a versatile piece that has just been good for a long time there. He came in and was a real force for Texas, really reliable in pass protection, can really add to the run game. I think he fits Miami's scheme. I'm not as worried about that. But I think if you're the Dolphins at number 13 overall, you're trying to get a lineman you feel good about first and foremost. And I think that you can definitely argue that Kelvin Banks is the best player on the board. Some people might take Will Johnson or Jade Baron. I could totally get behind that. They fill holes in the secondary. But I'm just not as worried about filling holes right now. I just want to get a guy that I think is going to be the biggest asset to the team long term. I would feel most pleased with them addressing the offensive line and our lack of really long-term guys on that unit with Kelvin Banks. He's going to be a very solid piece. So then the Colts at number 14, I'm sprinting to the podium here. We're taking Tyler Warren out of Penn State. Now, Tyler Warren is someone who you are going to have to get a little bit more creative with to get the most out of him in the receiving game, because he's just not like this supernatural field stretcher, a really natural route runner, but he's great with the ball in his hands. He's great when you drop those RPOs and those leaks, and I just feel like Shane Steichen is the type of guy that can really run an offense that uses him really well. And he can be such a big help to Anthony Richardson as a safety valve and just designing plays for him. He brings more physicality in the run game. I think he fits the Colts perfectly, and I think that he's worth that pick, even though I kind of like Colston Loveland a little bit more as a prospect, especially when you look at Colston Loveland in the eyes of like a potential jumbo slot receiver, a Drake London type of guy. But man, Tyler Warren fits perfectly in Indianapolis. I would take him. And then the Falcons at 15. We're taking Mike Green. We're also sprinting to the podium there because I've said it. The Falcons desperately need a pass rusher. And I think Mike Green has the potential to be a very, very, very good pass rusher with his physical tools and his explosiveness off the edge. So I think for Atlanta, there might be some better prospects on the board. But I'm okay taking Mike Green to fill that hole, because I do think that he has a ton of potential to really fill that role perfectly for them. So the Cardinals at 16, this is another fit I really like, taking Will Johnson. I think about this Cardinals defense, and I think they've done a great job addressing the defensive line this offseason. Getting Josh Sweat and Calais Campbell, and they drafted Darius Robinson last year. And for a unit that looks so barren, it suddenly looks like kind of a strength. But they do have some shakiness in the back end on the secondary. And I think Will Johnson would fit so perfectly into the scheme from Jonathan Gannon, zone-heavy coverage, letting him play off where he's very comfortable. Such a smooth guy, getting in and out of his breaks. He can be a playmaker. It's a perfect fit. And I think Will Johnson is not necessarily the blue chip that some people think he is, but I think he's well worth like a mid-first-round pick. I think that he can be like one of the top 10 cornerbacks in the league one day. And I think for Arizona, I think Jonathan Gannon would love a guy like him. And then the Cincinnati Bengals at number 17, they really need that interior presence on the defensive line, a guy that they can trust to come in and help them defend the run a little bit more, especially playing alongside Trey Hendrickson. You have your pass rush ace. I don't think you're as worried about getting a pass rusher here. So we're going to take Walter Nolan. I think Walter Nolan is very intriguing. I think he has so much potential, and he brings that floor as a run defender. He is really powerful. He can eat up space, and he's still learning as a pass rusher, but he brings that floor, and he definitely brings the ceiling if he puts it all together. I think Walter Nolan is worth that pick for Cincinnati, fills the need, ton of upside there. If I'm the Seahawks, I think the Seahawks should definitely go with interior offensive line. It was so atrocious last year. If you want to shift an offensive identity with Sam Darnold and Clint Kubiak as offensive coordinator, you brought in Cooper Kupp and JSN. You're trying to play 49ers style, right? So let's go ahead and get that interior presence that maybe not the best pass protector for Sam Darnold, because if you just wanted to protect Sam Darnold, I would take Tyler Booker. I love Tyler Booker. But he is very limited athletically with what he can do in the run game. And Seattle is going to need their athletes on the offensive line to get out in space and run block. And to me, this has Grey Zable written all over it out of North Dakota State. A guy that's going to be super versatile at the next level, tested really well at the combine, showed off how explosive he is, how he can really move. It's just a perfect fit, and I think you can live with the results there if you're Seattle. If I were the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, though, I'm sprinting to the podium. We're on a run of picks that I just think make a ton of sense. We're taking Jihaad Campbell. I think Jihaad Campbell could go, borderline top 10, and I really wouldn't be that mad about it because he could be such a transcending coverage piece. He is such a freak athlete. He already kind of has some instincts. He can play alongside not Quan Alexander, excuse me. Oh my gosh. What is his name? The Tampa Bay legend, Levante David. My goodness, guys, excuse me. He can take over for Levante David, who is still playing good ball, but is very, very much on the back end of his career. Todd Bowles can definitely use Jihaad Campbell downhill as a blitzer as well. It's the perfect fit. He's well worth the pick. He's another guy that I just think makes sense on all fronts for Tampa Bay. And then we get to the Panthers, who traded down with the Broncos. And now you just feel a lot better about taking one of your defenders here. Like, I 100% feel like now we're going to maximize the pick, and we're not reaching as much. And now we have that extra stab in the second round thanks to the Broncos. You're feeling good right now, and you can just take the guy that you like the most, your favorite defensive player on the board. Ultimately, though, I think I'm going to take Donovan Ezrau out of Boston College. A really safe pick, a guy that we know is going to come in off the edge and really contribute. He's a polished pass rusher. He is a little bit small, but he's not bad in run defense. Like, I think Donovan Ezrau could come in and be really productive, and he's worth the number 20 pick. Like, for the Panthers, he's going to help your defense take a sure leap next year. And all of a sudden, the defensive line looks really, really formidable. You're just getting a good piece in him. And I know some Panthers fans would say, well, we want Jalen Walker at 8. I know some Panthers fans that are fully ready to support that if the Panthers can't trade down and they just have to take their guy. I'm not in love with Jalen Walker. You know, I see a very solid player with good instincts. I like his body, but I just don't know if, even if you put him at edge, where I would put him personally, if he's going to have the power or the amazing explosiveness to really win. With Donovan Ezrau, I just have a guy that I know is good at that position. It's not as much of a risk, but I think the reward can be very real with Donovan Ezrau. I think he can be a very productive pass rusher. And then the Steelers at number 21. Everyone is going to say, well, Shedeur, perfect timing, baby. Let's do it if you're the Steelers. But if I'm the Steelers, look, I've been chalked up as a Shedeur hater because I said I would not take him in the first round. I see him as a second round type of guy, and I really do not hate Shedeur Sanders' game. But if I'm the Steelers, the one thing I definitely do not want to do is make the same mistake that we made a few years ago with Kenny Pickett. I mean, they were sitting right around the number 21 pick. They're always picking like around 20 because they never have a Super Bowl contending team and they never have a bad team. And they need to do what it takes to get out of this rut. And I just think like their mistake with Kenny Pickett was in a down quarterback class. They took him because they felt like they had to replace Big Ben and they felt like he was going to be the most NFL ready guy. And it just turned out that he wasn't that good of a quarterback. And I think Shedeur is a better prospect, sure, but I just don't think he's worth the first round pick. And I just don't think the Steelers should force that. I don't. I think they should, take the gamble of maybe being a little bit worse next year, and then they can draft an even more intriguing quarterback prospect. If they want to take Jalen Milroe, that's a more gamble, sure. That's more of a gamble. That's betting on a guy with some genuine upside. It would be a little more understandable to me, but I just wouldn't do it if I were the Steelers. I would wait for a better opportunity than just taking Shedeur, because I do think that Shedeur has some intriguing traits. I think that he can be a long-term starter in this league. I'm not blown away with him, though. I don't see this guy that's going to be a franchise savior. So if I'm the Steelers, I'm kicking the can down the road and not, forcing a guy that's actually going to hinder our long-term plans instead of elevating our long-term plans. I would have just re-signed Justin Fields in that case. If you want a guy that's going to be a solid young starter for you, I wouldn't take Shedeur with the number 21 pick. We're going to take Jade Baron out of Texas. I hope I pronounced that right, because Jade Baron is a guy that has the potential to be one of the best nickel backs in the league, in my opinion. He can follow in the footsteps of Brian Branch and Cooper DeJean just because he's so instinctual. He's a playmaker. He's physical in run defense. For the Steelers, he will fit their identity perfectly. He'll help that defense that struggled a bit on the back end. They don't have an amazing nickel back. So I think Jade Baron is just better than locking yourself into your quarterback of the future. We're passing on Shedeur. We're passing on Jalen Milroe. We're passing on Jackson Dart. We're passing on Tyler Shuck. And we're just going to wait for a better opportunity to get our quarterback of the future. We are not going to make a similar mistake to Kenny Pickett. So the Chargers at 22, we're sprinting to the podium for Colston Loveland, not just because he's a Jim Harbaugh guy, but because Justin Herbert needs a receiving weapon, a guy that is very sure-handed like Colston Loveland, a guy that can be a real threat, a matchup nightmare, in my opinion. You could even line him up on the outside, I think. I think Colston Loveland has, very rare movement skills for a guy that's 6'6". He can really run routes on top of his hands. And I think the tight end spot was especially frustrating for Chargers fans last year because they dropped a lot of critical dimes from Justin Herbert. So, I understand going defensive tackle here. I really do. You lost Poona Ford to the Rams. I like Derrick Harmon for sure. That's the guy that I would pick if I'm not taking Loveland, but he's on the board, and he's just perfect for them in this moment in time. Now, the Green Bay Packers at number 23, this is a pick that I have made continuously for them, and it's just because I think he's a wildly underrated prospect and is definitely worth a first-round pick, even though he's ranked at number 70 by PFF. We're taking Azure Thomas out of Florida State, a very young player. He's huge. He's like a dominating presence on the outside in press coverage. He already looks pretty polished in that regard. I think that Azure Thomas is a really ascending player that could prove to be a huge steal. I think we could look back in a couple of years and say, well, this guy is kind of a freaky cornerback. Why wasn't he taken higher? Why wasn't he in top 10 consideration? Because he was just playing on that bad Florida State team that no one was paying attention to. But he was really good, and I think for the Packers, you definitely want to work on your pass rush, which has been so bad. But you also want to get a cornerback just because they look really barren at that position, alongside Jair, who could be on his way out anyway. You got Keyshawn Nixon maybe starting there. We don't want that. Now I'm putting myself in the shoes of the Minnesota Vikings and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. And if I'm the Vikings, I know exactly what I should do here. You should trade down. You spent all of those picks to trade up for Dallas Turner last year. And now you only have 4 picks in this draft. And I understand the roster is looking very complete, and you have the opportunity to get a nice player here for sure. You could take Omarion Hampton, or you could take the better running back prospect, in my opinion, in Trevon Henderson. They have him all the way down at 58. I think he's worth a first-round pick. But the Vikings should just get more stabs because, their roster is complete, but you always want more guys on rookie contracts. And if you trade down, it's really not the end of the world. And I think for the Vikings specifically, you want to get another corner. And I think that you can definitely feel like if you trade down, you're going to get your stab at this crop of guys who I think are all going to be late first to early second round and are all on a similar kind of caliber and will all really help in Brian Flores' defense. So we're going to do a trade down for the Vikings. And with Malachi Starks continuing to fall, I am sure that there is a team that is interested in making a trade with the Vikings to get a defender from a certain school and a guy that plays a certain position. They've just traded a certain guy away that plays that position. The Philadelphia Eagles. Long story short, the Philadelphia Eagles are who we are going to make a trade with if we are the Vikings. They're going to come up and get Malachi Starks. And if I'm the Vikings, we're obviously wanting to get number 32, but I'm looking a little bit more for volume in terms of picks instead of like really high picks. So we're going to ask for a couple stabs on day 3, maybe even that 5th next year from the Texans. I think the Eagles would agree to that. They do. Now the Vikings get that extra volume, 2 more stabs in this draft, another pick next year. It's not the biggest trade up, but the Eagles are going to get their guy to insert in Vic Fangio's defense, a amazing sound coverage player that is going to be ready to help them right away as they attempt to repeat as Super Bowl champions. After losing CJ Gardner-Johnson, that's just the perfect replacement in my opinion. The Eagles could use that kind of center fielder. Now they add another Georgia guy, bringing the chemistry, building up the culture more and more and more. We might as well just call them the Philadelphia Bulldogs on defense. It's a winning formula for them, as we've seen. So now the Houston Texans at number 25. We got to go offensive line if I'm the Texans. There's just no way, as much as it would be cool to get Emeka Egbuka back for C.J. Stroud, you're worried about Tank Dell's future if you're them. We got to go with offensive line, and I think we're just going to take Tyler Booker because Tyler Booker is a guy who, like I said, doesn't really have the athleticism in the run game, but he can come in and be a stout pass protector for C.J. Stroud. He might be the best pure pass protector of any lineman in this draft, and I don't think that he's going to be as much of a liability in the run game because the Texans want to run downhill a little bit more after hiring Nick Caley as offensive coordinator. They're moving away from Bobby Slowick's Shanahan zone run schemes where they're trying to get out to the perimeter a lot of the time. Tyler Booker is just perfect for the Texans. He will help them get back on track, rebuild that offensive line, and try to make a playoff run this year and get the most out of C.J. Stroud. Don't let him get frazzled again this year. So the Rams at 26. This is another one that I'm intrigued by. I really like Maxwell Hairston as a prospect out of Kentucky. I mean, that guy is blazing. What he ran at the combine checks out. The way that he can shut off windows by just spinning around the field, backpedaling. He's all over the place. He's a playmaker. He's a willing defender in the run game. He is a little bit on the smaller side. I wonder how much press coverage he can play, but that doesn't really matter as much in Los Angeles because they play a lot of zone coverage. He can play off the ball, be a playmaker. I think he has a ton of upside for them. They need another corner. They need a guy that can be a difference maker on the back end, I think. And I think Maxwell Hairston can definitely be a difference maker for them. Ravens at 27 are kind of like the Texans, where I would like Tyler Booker for them, but you know who I also really, really like in this draft as a potential guard, especially late in the first round, is Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State. Like, I really think that Tyler Booker and Donovan Jackson should be the picks for both the Texans or the Ravens, depending on who Houston takes. We'll see who falls to Baltimore. In this case, it's Donovan Jackson. The Ravens just have that hole. They tried it with Daniel Falele. Now they get another guard in Donovan Jackson, who's really going to help the run game, I'd say especially. He might take a little bit of time to get going as a pass protector for Lamar, but Lamar can work around that anyway. We know how good he is evading sacks in the backfield, and Donovan Jackson could develop into an absolute stud. And I even think that he has tackle versatility if they get themselves into a bind ever with an injury. He proved that at Ohio State. Very, very nice ad for a contending team in the Ravens. And then the Lions at 28. We're going to take another guy that I think is a little bit underrated in this class, and that's Nic Scourton out of Texas A&M. Yes, I would take Nic Scourton before Shamar Stewart. And that's not really, I wouldn't call myself a huge Shamar Stewart hater, but I think people are forgetting that what Nic Scourton did at Purdue 2 years ago when he was playing a little bit lighter. He played in a different role at Texas A&M. They had him put on weight, focus a little bit more on his run defense. That took away from him as a pass rusher. But I think he has tremendous potential. He's a moldable piece. He's going to be a complementary edge rusher alongside Aiden Hutchinson. Great culture guy. Detroit is especially determined to get those good locker room guys, and I think that Nic Scourton is much more than just a good locker room guy. He can be a real difference maker, come in right away, produce as a pass rusher, be a sound run defender. That's what he did this year at Texas A&M. And if I'm the Commanders, I think what the Commanders have done this offseason defensively suggests that they want to shift things around from how it looked last year. And I look at corner for them and I say, I like these corners. Corner's definitely a big need for them. But edge is also a big need for them. Dante Fowler was like their most productive guy, and even he was pretty bad in run defense, and I think that's ultimately the reason why they let him walk in free agency. They want to get a little bit beefier, I think, on the defensive line and really try to plug the run a little bit more. We saw Saquon run all over them in the NFC Championship. It all really starts there ultimately, and I think Shamar Stewart is calling their name. I think Shamar Stewart is well worth the 29th pick. I think a lot of people thought he was getting overrated, but him falling out of the first round would just be overcorrection in my opinion, because he still is a truly freaky athlete. He's a beast. He already brings a nice floor as a run defender. He could be such a powerful pass rusher. And if you teach him moves, and if Dan Quinn and his coaching staff can really elevate his game, I mean, he could be a premier edge rusher. And then the Bills at number 30, we're taking a guy that I honestly don't think should fall this far. I actually have him ranked a lot higher than number 30 on my big board. We're taking Derrick Harmon out of Oregon. I just look at the Bills and I feel like, let's bolster that pass rush wherever we can. Maybe off the edge with James Pierce Jr., but I just think Derrick Harmon is maybe the best pass rushing defensive tackle in this draft. It's either him or Mason Graham. He was so productive this year. He would really help that Bills pass rush. Even though they have some good guys on the interior, I think that's a very understandable pick for them. And he shouldn't fall that far. I don't know how that happened. There's probably a spot for him. I was eyeing LA for sure, but I would take him higher than this. So the Kansas City Chiefs at number 31. They are a very, very interesting team to me, because everyone was like, after the Super Bowl, they got to take a tackle. Mahomes got shredded. Ever since then, they gave Jalen Moore a solid contract in free agency. We know they took Kingsley Sumataya last year, and they seem to be excited about him. If they're going to take an offensive lineman, I would think they address the interior after trading away Joe Thuney, but I just don't think that's the route they're going to go. I think maybe they go defensive line alongside Chris Jones, but we're going to say screw it. Let's take an opportunity to throw a haymaker at the rest of the league if this guy can be everything that I think he can be. Guys, we're going to take Trevon Henderson out of Ohio State, a guy that I think is worth the first-round pick. He could be such a home run hitter. He is so explosive, and also he's amazing in pass protection, like one of the best pass protecting running back prospects we have seen in a long time. That could certainly help for Patrick Mahomes. You know, people will say, oh, he has vision concerns. He might be the next DeAndre Swift. But if I'm the Chiefs, I'm taking the chance here because he can do it all at his best. He can be an asset in the receiving game too, as a guy that can make plays in space. Andy Reid can design those screens for him. He can hit the home runs. He has the body to move downhill a little bit. I know they tried this with Clyde Edwards-Helaire a couple years back, but Trevon Henderson is not Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He has some legit physical traits to be a huge difference maker to elevate a playoff offense. And like I said, that's my philosophy with running backs. You can take one in the first round if you feel like you have the offense to get the most out of him. And I think that it would be absolute fireworks in Kansas City with Trevon Henderson at the helm. You know, Isaiah Pacheco was a fun story and all, and he's fun to watch run, but I don't know if he's actually that fun on the stat sheet. When you look at his impact in the run game, you can do a lot better. I like Trevon Henderson to the Chiefs. I wanted to find somewhere to get him in the first round because I think he should be a rounder even more than Omarion Hampton. And I just love the Chiefs for him. And that brings us to our final pick of the first round. The Minnesota Vikings traded down. They officially have 6 picks in this draft. We're going to make their first one. And like I said, they played this perfectly, really, because only one of those corners came off the board in Maxwell Hairston. And that wasn't even the guy that I thought was the most intriguing scheme fit. I think the most intriguing scheme fit here could take a chance on Benjamin Morrison with his injury history. Do we do it? I don't know. That's definitely a bit of a risk, as much as I think that he's clearly the best cornerback here when healthy. Siobhan Rall didn't play this year, but he should be good to go. And he is such a lengthy corner that I think has a lot of potential in press coverage. He can really knock guys off their routes. He's a tenacious as a run defender. I think that Brian Flores could get him downhill. He's just another guy that can wreak havoc in that defense. I think they need a little bit more help on the back end. As good as their defense was last year, that was definitely their weakness. You know, when Brian Flores gets his guys that he can really trust on an island, that's when the defense gets to a whole new level. I saw it firsthand in Miami. Maybe Benjamin Morrison is worth a gamble. I don't want to sleep on Trey Amos either, but I do think that he might be less enticing of a man-to-man corner than Siobhan Rall. So that's who we're going to take after trading down. We can live with the gamble. We are going to take Siobhan Rall to the Minnesota Vikings. So after all that rambling, here it is. This is what I would do if I were every single team in the first round of this draft after scouting all of these guys and just thinking about all of the fits. This is, in my eyes, the perfect mock draft. I mean, couldn't do it any better because I really looked at it from the lens of what I would do. So I know this was a very long video, but when you're delivering all of these opinions, I wanted to make sure I went in depth and really explained all of my reasoning. So if you watch this all the way through, I mean, you guys are nuts. I truly appreciate the support. So with all that said, I've got nothing left for y'all. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I will catch y'all next time.